Welcome back guys. Today's video should be a simple one for me, and it also should be an easygoing and relaxing one for you to watch because it's not a review. We've got a build video for you today, and as you can probably see from some of the parts on the bench, it's sponsored by Deepcool because they've obviously got some new products they want to show off, and we're going to do that by building a system. So it's going to be kind of a mid-range to high-end build, pretty simple with air cooling, and so I hope you enjoy watching it. Instead of reeling off a load of facts and figures from a review guide and a spec sheet, I'm going to kind of just say what I see and really want to look at this case first because this is a new case from Deepcool. It's the CK560. You should be able to pick it up in the UK now for around about 100 quid, although stock levels on Amazon are looking a bit iffy at the moment and prices might be inflated a little bit, which is what we've come to expect recently. I'm usually an admirer of Deepcool cases. They tend to bring pretty cheap, good value cases that are also solid build quality. The CK560 seems to live up to that tradition in most areas. So let's take a closer look at this case. So you've got at the front a removable high airflow front panel. It's got kind of like a crosshair pattern that makes up the vented section. It easily clips off. And it's kind of got a bit of a curve to this front panel. If you saw the launch pictures on the Deepcool Facebook page, it looked quite curved, but actually when you see it in the flesh, it's not quite as curved as it looks, but it's easily removable, that front panel. Then behind there's a dust filter, and you get 320mm fans. These are RGB on the front. The rest of this front panel is removable as well, but there's not really much point removing it because you can get to all the screws and everything from that side. And then removing side panels, it's just 2 thumb screws that are captive. Inside it's a pretty basic design. It's a standard kind of mid-tower size, so it'll accept up to ATX motherboards. Obviously you can install mini ATX, micro ATX, but generally speaking it'll be full ATX boards installed in here. Also, you've got some grommets for the cables down the side of the motherboard. These up top here don't have grommets on, but they're, quite small, probably not needed. And then a couple more on the power supply shroud. Again, no grommets, but for this price, maybe that's something you compromise on. One thing that the CK560 has, which was missing in the CG560, I think, that I reviewed a few months ago, is the EVGA support bracket. I did miss that in the other case, so I'm happy to see that it's back in the CK560. In the front of the case, in terms of cooling, as I said, 320mm fans will fit in there. You can also fit 240mm fans, or in terms of radiators, up to 360mm, so that includes 280s and 240s as well. In the roof, you can fit up to 240mm fans, 220mm fans, or again you can fit up to a 280mm radiator. I doubt you could fit a 360 and a 280 at the same time, but I'm not going off a spec sheet. As I said, I'm just taking it as I see it, so if I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section. And also let me know what you think of this case and the other Deepcool parts that we've got on show. As well as the 320mm fans up front, Deepcool also supplies the case with a 140mm rear exhaust fan installed. Not RGB, that's just a plain black fan. As you can see in here as well, it's quite an open layout, so there's plenty of space for decent sized graphics cards. I'm going to be using this EVGA RTX 3070 XC3, and you can see that if we move the bracket out of the way, that fits in there, no problem whatsoever. And also in here you can fit a CPU cooler with a maximum height of 175mm, so plenty of space inside the case. Front I/O, you've got a power button, 2 USB 3.0 Type A ports, a combined 3.5mm audio jack for headphones and microphones, an LED button, obviously to scroll through the different RGB LED patterns and colours, and then at the end there's a USB Type-C port. Also on the top you've got a removable magnetic dust filter, and then you can see behind there is quite an open vented layout. I like these square vents. I think they look a bit different to what you normally get with like diamond shapes and stuff like that. I like how they look, and you can see those vents as well continue with that same square pattern on the back as well, so it looks good. I like how that looks so far. It's Yeah, it's an interesting case, although it's quite basic. On the floor of the case, you've got some feet that raise it up about 20 to 25 millimeters, so good ground clearance. There's rubber pads on there as well, or foam pads, look like rubber. And then you've got a removable filter there for the power supply as well. Good to see that this is a pretty decent quality with the plastic frame around it rather than one of those, just those flexible perforated metal mesh ones. Nice to see that. And you can also see we've got some mountings here which will be for the 3.5-inch drive bays, so that looks like they can be removed as well. We've got thumb screws holding this metal side panel on. Again, these look like they're captive thumb screws. Side panels, just a standard sheet metal. There's no sound dampening material or anything on there. And then around this side of the case, not a lot really to talk about here, except for there's not a large gap really for cable management. It looks like probably 20 millimeters at best. You've got some probably areas that you can zip tie your cables to on these folded metal pieces here. You can see there's two mounts here for 2.5-inch SSDs or 2.5-inch hard drives. Down at the bottom here, there's also another two drive bays for 3.5-inch drives, or also you can fit 2.5-inch drives on there as well. 3.5-inch drives will just clip in tool-free, and then you slide the brackets back in and they lock in place. Also around here as well, it looks like we've got a RGB controller of some sort, so that's obviously to control the RGB of the front fans using the LED button on the top. It also looks like the fans are DC controlled because they're 3-pin fan headers. They already come all connected up together to the RGB hub, and they're all daisy chained to each other, and then you just got this 3-pin fan header to connect that to your motherboard. That is the CK560. It looks like a pretty basic but functional mid-tower chassis. To complete the build, I'm going to be using a air cooler on the CPU as well from Deepcool. This is the AK620. I reviewed this a few months back. It actually did a bit of a comparison between the AK620 and the Noctua D15S. Seems like a good cooler, that, so I'm happy to use that again in this build. And then the other Deepcool product we've got as well is the power supply. So this is the new Deepcool PQ1000M. That's a 1000 watt, 80 plus gold modular power supply. You can pick that up on Amazon, again in the UK, for about 130 quid. So that sounds like pretty good value for an 80 plus gold rated 1000 watt power supply. And the AK620, that's going for around about 50 quid on Amazon, or 50 to 55. So that again seems like decent value. And then to complete the system, I'm going to be using an AMD Ryzen 5 5600X. So not the most powerful CPU in the world, but still a solid choice for gaming. And the motherboard is going to be this MSI Mag B550 Tomahawk motherboard I've used before. Again, good motherboard, that, I like that one. And then for memory, I'm going to be using this Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro SL. This is the slightly lower profile stuff. It's a 4x8 GB kit, 32 gig in total, 3600 megahertz. And then storage, it's the PNY XLR8 Gaming CS3040. It's a 1TB M.2 SSD, and it's PCIe Gen 4, so that'll work well with the motherboard and the 5600X. And as I've said, for graphics, I'm going to be using this EVGA RTX 3070 XC3. So it should make a good, well, it's a pretty high-end build, I suppose, and hopefully we'll get it all in this case and everything will go smoothly. So let's crack on with the build. So the build's complete. It looks perfectly fine. It's nice and easy to build. It is a basic looking system, but there's nothing wrong with that. Not everything has to have, you know, the tons of RGB and water cooling bells and whistles. Building the system went perfectly well. I don't tend to come across a lot of issues with Deepcool cases when building systems inside them. One minor thing I did come across was one of the motherboard standoffs wasn't correctly screwed in. It was slightly misaligned and slightly cross-threaded, but managed to get it out easily. Put it back in again. If you're an experienced builder, you would have noticed that straight away, so it's not a big issue. A couple of things worth mentioning in terms of setup. So after the system was built, the front fans are quite noisy at higher RPM, so I've just set those at 550 to 600 RPM. Seem to still give a decent amount of airflow, but I think probably if I was going to use this case, I might be tempted to swap those fans out for something a bit quieter. I've also got the CPU fan on a custom curve as well, so while ever the temperature of the CPU is below 75 to 80 degrees C, the CPU fan will be running around 800 RPM. That keeps the system nice and quiet as well. Obviously, when the system does start to get warmer and CPU temperature reaches between 75 and 80, the fans start to ramp up a bit just to avoid any issues with CPU temperature. But currently it's running pretty cool. I've got the Cinebench R23 benchmark and the 3D Mark Time Spy stress test running simultaneously in a minute. I'll pop the side panel on in a bit and leave it to get up to temperature, so we'll be able to have a look at the thermals as well soon if you're interested in that. Other than the fan configuration, no real problems building this case. It's not a bad case. There's plenty of space for decent sized graphics cards, tall air coolers, etc. The only thing that probably I would change, as well as the fans, is the cables on the power supply. I don't like those split licorice type cables. If they're going to be in that flat style, I prefer them to be just one complete flat cable. These are split and they don't look as neat probably as the others, but other than that, no real problems with it. So I've just popped that tempered glass side panel back on, and you can see the 3D Mark Time Spy and Cinebench R23 stress tests are both running simultaneously. They've been going for about just over 25 minutes now, so that should give it enough time for everything to get up to its steady state temperature. And if you are interested in how this performs in terms of the thermals, I can tell you that both the CPU and GPU temperature are running about 60 degrees C, which to me sounds pretty good for this 5600X and RTX 3070. So that's the Deepcool build finished. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know what you think to the finished system in the comments section. Let us know if there's anything you would have done differently. If you want to help support us at Kit Guru, you can always head over to our store, pick up some merch, or you could subscribe to our Patreon. And as always, if you want to catch up on the in-depth technical reviews, head over to the website. And if you want to connect with us through social media, check out our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Discord channels.